It was the most iconic piece of gear the British soldier had, a useless 3-pound tin lid from a war his father fought. It couldn't stop a bullet, so why were they using it to stay alive? May 28th, 1940. A waterlogged drainage ditch somewhere on the road to Vern, Belgium. The world is mud. It's in your mouth, a gritty paste of Belgian soil and cordite. It's caked in the wool of your battle dress, making the uniform weigh twice what it should. And it's the only thing, a shallow, 2-foot-deep trench of it, separating Private Arthur Shaw from the German 6th Army. The air shivers. Arthur flinches, his head ducking low, the distinctive soup bowl shape of his Mark I Brodie helmet scraping against the slick clay wall. The sound isn't the crump of distant artillery, which has been the background noise of his life for 2 weeks. This is the sharp, high-velocity crack of a Mauser K98K, a sniper. The bullet snaps the air where his head was a second before, thudding wetly into the earth on the far side of the ditch. "Stay down, you daft bugger," a voice growls next to him. Corporal Alf Mulligan doesn't even look up. He's methodically trying to scrape a congealed mass of mud from the bolt of his own Lee Enfield rifle. At 38, Mulligan is an old man here, a veteran of the peacetime army who remembers when this helmet was new, in 1916. "He's got us pinned, Corp," Arthur whispers, his voice a dry croak. He can feel his heart hammering against his ribs. "He's got that tree pinned," Mulligan corrects, not unkindly. "He's just letting us know he's there, keeping us miserable." Miserable wasn't the word. The British Expeditionary Force was collapsing. This wasn't a line. It was a series of desperate, disconnected pockets of men falling back towards the sea. Arthur's platoon had been ambushed by an armoured car 2 hours ago. The lucky ones were here, in this ditch, while the sky rained intermittent mortar fire and the sniper played his game. Arthur leans his head back, the weight of the helmet, a dull ache in his neck. He hates it. He hates the chin strap, which is either too tight and chafing his raw skin, or too loose, causing the tin lid to rock precariously with every movement. Another crack snap echoes from the cluster of trees 400 yards away. This time, it's followed by a metallic ping. Further down the ditch, Private Davies yelps and clutches the side of his head, tumbling forward into the muddy water. "Man hit!" someone shouts. Mulligan is moving instantly, sliding on his belly through the muck, rifle held high. Where? Where is it, Davies? Davies rolls over, his face white with terror, but his hands are empty. He's feeling his helmet, which has been knocked clean off his head and lies upside down in the mud. It hit my helmet, Corp," Davies stammers, his fingers probing his ear. Mulligan grabs the helmet. There it is, a perfect clean hole, punched through the side brim. The bullet had entered one side, passed through the half-inch of air between the helmet's steel shell and Davies's skull, and punched out the other. It hadn't so much as scratched his scalp. Davies starts to laugh, a high-pitched, hysterical giggle. "It missed me. Bloody thing missed me." Mulligan stares at the helmet, his expression unreadable. He looks at the 2 perfect holes, one in, one out. He then looks at Davies, and his face darkens. He doesn't share the relief. "Shut up," Mulligan snarls, his voice low. "But Corp, it saved me. It did sod all," Mulligan snaps, tossing the helmet back at him. "You know what that was? That was God, or an angel, or whatever you pray to, deciding you should live. That helmet just watched. If your head was a half-inch wider, or you'd been leaning, you'd be getting your brains scraped out of this ditch." He slides back to Arthur, settling with a heavy sigh. He takes his own helmet off, regarding it with open contempt. It's the standard Brodie, painted in a rough, non-reflective khaki, a wide, shallow brim, a simple liner. "Useless," Mulligan mutters, tapping the steel with a fingernail. "Absolutely bloody useless." Arthur, still shaken, blinks. "But it's for shrapnel, isn't it? From above?" "Aye," Mulligan scoffs, his voice thick with a cynicism born of a long retreat. "It's a wonderful piece of kit, provided the Jerry agrees to only fight you in a deep trench, and provided he only uses artillery that explodes directly over your head. But this This is a sniper's war, lad. A tank's war. And what does this do for a bullet from the side? Or a piece of shrapnel from a mortar burst next to you? Sweet Fanny Adams, that's what. He rubs his face, the grit scratching his skin. It's too shallow. Leaves your temples, your neck, your whole bloody skull exposed to anything that ain't falling straight out of the sky. It's a hat, lad. A heavy, metal hat from the last war. And we're dying in it. The words hang in the cold, damp air. The sniper, having made his point, has gone quiet. The only sounds are the distant, rhythmic thump of artillery and the chattering of Arthur Shaw's teeth. The cold is the real enemy now. The adrenaline from the sniper fire is fading, and the raw, bone-deep chill of the Belgian water is seeping in. Arthur's hands are blue. He'd give anything for a fire, for a moment of warmth, for a hot drink. I'd kill for a brew, Corp. Arthur shivers, his voice barely a whisper. Just one hot cup of tea. Mulligan is silent. He's staring at the muddy, stagnant water at the bottom of the ditch. He's looking at the pathetic little pile of twigs and broken wood he's been hoarding in his pack, trying to keep dry. Then, his gaze lifts. He looks at Arthur, shivering in his useless helmet. A strange, slow smile spreads across Alf Mulligan's face. It's a smile of pure, unadulterated, desperate genius. A brew, you say, lad? He whispers, his eyes gleaming. I think we can manage a brew. He holds up his own helmet, the one he just called a useless piece of tin. Pass me your water bottle. Arthur stares at the corporal as if he's just announced he's going to fly home. Corp, you're off your trolley. We light a fire. That sniper'll have us for target practice. And you'll ruin your helmet. Mulligan lets out a short, sharp laugh that's more a bark of air. Ruin it? It's a Mark I. They made millions of 'em. And as for Jerry, he gestures to the grey, overcast sky, heavy with moisture. The light's going. The air's thick. We're not going to send up a bonfire, lad. Just a flicker. A bit of eat. He's already moving, crawling 2 feet to a slightly wider part of the ditch, where the bank offers a small overhang. Right, give me those twigs. And your entrenching tool. Gently, now. With the small shovel, Mulligan doesn't dig. He sculpts. He scrapes 2 parallel ridges of thick, clay-like mud, about 6 inches apart. It's a tiny, absurd-looking stove, barely large enough to hold a mug. Then, he takes his helmet. He unhooks the chin strap, letting it dangle, and places the helmet upside down, rim down, across the 2 mud ridges. It fits perfectly. The wide, shallow bowl sits stable, a perfect cooking pot. Now, the water, Mulligan orders. Arthur unscrews his canteen. He has maybe a 1/4 pint left. He pours it into the helmet's inverted crown. The khaki paint is already scratched and worn. The water pools there, a muddy, shallow puddle. It's barely enough to cover a man's palm. More, Mulligan says. That's all I've got, Corp. Davies, the man who was nearly killed, crawls over, his own canteen offered. Take it, Corp. I don't mind. He pours his own meagre ration in. Now they have perhaps 1/2 inch of water. Right, Mulligan says, his voice low and focused. Now the magic. From a waterproof oilskin pouch in his breast pocket, he pulls his fire kit, a flint, a small piece of steel, and a precious, tightly rolled ball of cotton wool and lint, dark with grease. No matches, Corp? Arthur whispers, watching the man's hands. Matches get wet. Matches break. Fire's life, lad. You don't trust your life to a match. Mulligan shields the tiny mud stove with his body, his back to the sniper's estimated position. He angles his head down, so his own helmet provides a secondary shield, creating a small, dark cave of wool and mud. Shrie, shrie. The sparks fly from the steel, tiny and pathetic. They hit the greasy lint. Nothing. Shrie. A tiny ember glows, red as a demon's eye. Mulligan doesn't breathe. He exhales, a long, slow, controlled stream of air, nursing the ember. The lint smokes, an acrid, oily smell. He adds a sliver of wood, no thicker than a fingernail, from his hoarded stash. The smoke is the problem. A thin, grey-blue wisp snakes up. Corp, The smoke? Arthur hisses, his eyes darting towards the German lines. It's fine, Mulligan grunts, never looking up. It's a wet day. It'll look like mist, like breath. Now be quiet and pray. He feeds the tiny flame. A twig, then another. It's a smokeless fire. A soldier's tricker fire, so small and hot, built from the driest tinder, that it produces minimal plume. It's a desperate gamble. But the helmet is the miracle. The Brodie's shallow design, so appalling for deflecting a bullet, is a marvel of thermal efficiency. The wide, flat bottom captures every last calorie of heat from the tiny fire. The steel, a good conductor, transfers it directly to the shallow pool of water. Within a minute, the water is steaming. Within 2, it's shivering on the edge of a boil. The 3 men are mesmerized. They stare at the tiny wisps of steam rising from the helmet, a beacon of impossible warmth in their cold, wet hell. The sound a faint, high-pitched hisses, the most beautiful thing Arthur has ever heard. Mulligan, a man transformed, pulls one more item from his pack, a small, grease-stained tin. He opens it. Inside are 3 precious lumps of sugar and a dark, crumbled mass of tea leaves. He drops a pinch of the leaves into the simmering water. The aroma hits them instant litter, strong and impossibly civilized. Well, look at that, Mulligan whispers, a genuine smile breaking through the grime on his face. He taps the hot steel rim with his knuckle, wincing. Old John Brodie designed a helmet for shrapnel coming straight down. He looks at the simmering water, then up at Arthur. Turns out, he made the best damn kettle in the entire British Army. Arthur fumbles with his own canteen cup, a battered tin mug, his hands shaking so much from the cold and anticipation that he nearly drops it. Steady, lad, Mulligan murmurs. The corporal doesn't have a cup of his own. It was lost during the ambush. He simply dunks his entire canteen into the helmet, scooping up a third of the brew, and then carefully pours a share into Arthur's and Davies's cups. The rest he leaves in the pot. Arthur lifts the mug. The steam hits his face, a cloud of hot, moist air that smells of cheap tea and wood smoke. It's the first clean-smelling thing he has encountered in a week. He doesn't wait. He tilts the cup and drinks, the liquid scalding his lips and tongue. He doesn't care. The heat hits his stomach like a physical blow, a shockwave of profound, life-affirming warmth that radiates outward to his frozen fingertips and toes. It's not just hot, it's life. He can feel the blood moving in his veins again. The tea is gritty with mud, bitter from being overbrewed, and has a faint, metallic taste from the helmet's paint. It is the single best-tasting drink of his entire life. Davies, next to him, is crying silently, tears of sheer, exhausted relief, cutting clean tracks through the grime on his face as he sips his own cup. Mulligan, seeing the state of them, reaches back into his pack. The fire is dying down to glowing embers, perfect for keeping the rest of the brew warm. He produces his final, most treasured ration, a half-bar of chocolate and vitamin plain, rock-hard, waxy, and utterly priceless. He breaks it into 3 uneven pieces with the butt of his knife. "Get that down, you," he orders, passing the chunks over. "Eat it slow. Let it melt." The 3 men sit in silence in the deepening twilight, huddled around the faint red glow of the embers under the steel helmet. They sip their hot, smoky tea and let the gritty chocolate dissolve on their tongues. For 5 minutes, there is no war. There is no sniper, no retreat, no distant rumble of 88mm guns. There is no Belgium, no France, no English Channel they are so desperately trying to reach. There is only the mud ditch, the taste of sugar, and the feeling of warmth spreading through their bodies. It is a pocket of civilization. A ritual of home, performed in the most profane of temples. "You know," Mulligan says, his voice quiet, his cynicism momentarily washed away by the tea. "My granddad, he was at the Somme. He had one of these, exactly the same." He reaches out and taps the helmet, which is still warm. "He told me they called it the Shrapnel-Stopper, but he also said—" Mulligan pauses, a small grin touching his lips. "He said its real job was for the morning shave. Said the brim was the perfect size for a half pint of water and a bit of soap. better than any basin. Arthur tries to picture it. Shaving. In a trench. It seems as alien as flying to the moon. So, Mulligan concludes, taking another sip from his canteen. It's a rubbish hat. It's a passable wash basin. But it's a first-rate kettle. He holds his canteen up in a mock toast. To John Brodie, the man who invented the battlefield kitchen sink. Arthur and Davies, their spirits lifted, manage weak chuckles and raise their own cups. The kitchen sink, Arthur repeats. The click of metal on metal from 400 yards away is almost too quiet to hear. But Mulligan, a veteran, hears it. His head snaps up. What? Arthur begins. Bolt? Mulligan hisses. He's back. The word is barely out of his mouth when the air is torn apart by a sound Arthur has never heard. A sound that makes the sniper's rifle seem like a toy. It's not a crack or a bang. It's an obscene, accelerating YIIIIESHREEK that rises in pitch and volume until it fills the entire world. A sound of pure, concentrated malice. Mortar. Mulligan bellows, his voice cracking with the volume. Incoming. The world explodes. A column of black earth and fire erupts from the field 30 yards to their left. The concussion hits them like a solid wall, blowing out their tiny fire in a puff of ash and steam. Mud and shrapnel rain down around them, splattering into the ditch, thwacking into the clay bank. Mulligan, already acting, kicks the mud ridges apart, scattering the embers. He grabs his still steaming helmet, not bothering to empty it, and slams it back onto his head. Arthur cries out as a cascade of hot, leaf-filled water splashes over the corporal's face and down his neck. Mulligan just roars. Move! Move! He's found us! That was a ranging shot. Next one's in the bloody ditch. Go! The moment of peace is over. The kettle is a helmet again, its useless steel shell now the only thing between Alf Mulligan's skull and the next rain of shrapnel. There is no thought, only animal instinct. Arthur scrambles up the slick clay bank, his hobnailed boots finding no purchase. He digs his fingers into the mud and hauls himself over the top, flat onto his belly. The ground is terrifyingly open. The Belgian field, moments ago obscured by twilight, is now lit by the intermittent, strobing flashes of the mortar bursts. Run, you idiot, Mulligan screams, right behind him. The corporal shoves Arthur forward, the hot water from his helmet still dripping down his back. Whomp crunch. The next mortar shell lands with a sickening finality, precisely where they had been sitting. The explosion is deafening, a wet, violent thud that obliterates the ditch. The overpressure wave kicks Arthur in the back, throwing him forward. He lands hard, the wind knocked out of him, his rifle's sling tangled around his arm. He can't breathe. He's paralyzed, his face pressed into the mud, convinced a piece of shrapnel has cut him in two. Up, get up. Mulligan is hauling him to his feet, screaming into his face. The corporal's eyes are wild. They've got us bracketed. Run for the trees. The sniper's rifle cracks again. And this time, it's not a game. The bullets are zipping past their ears with a vicious, personal snap. The fire is coordinated. The sniper is pinning them in the open, holding them in the mortar's kill box. Davies, with me! Mulligan yells. Arthur starts to run, a clumsy, high-kneed gait through the sucking mud. He's running on pure terror. He can hear Davies panting and sobbing beside him. The trees are 100 yards away. 100 yards of open, flat death. Another mortar shell shrieks in. This one sounds different. It doesn't seem to be falling on them, but above them. Airburst! Mulligan screams, his voice cracking. He doesn't drop. He shoves Arthur and Davies forward. Don't stop! Run through it! The shell explodes 50 feet over their heads in a vicious puff of black smoke. It's a rain of white-hot steel. Arthur hears it before he feels it. A sudden, violent hailstorm of metal fragments, ranging from the size of a pea to the size of a railway spike, slicing through the air and thudding into the soft earth all around them. He hears Davies scream a short, cut-off shriek and the man crumples, his legs tangling, and he pitches face first into the mud. Arthur freezes, turning to help. Don't stop! Mulligan roars, grabbing the back of Arthur's uniform. At that exact second, Arthur hears a sound he will never forget. It's not the ping of a bullet. It's a deep, resonant, sickening thwack, like a sledgehammer hitting a cast-iron skillet. Corporal Alf Mulligan stops dead. His knees buckle. His rifle slips from his grasp. He stands perfectly still for one long second, his body rigid, before falling straight backward into the mud like a toppled statue. He doesn't move. "Corp!" Arthur screams. The sniper's bullet snaps past Arthur's head, forcing him to drop. He's flat on his stomach, the smell of cordite and churned mud filling his nostrils. Davies is groaning 10 feet away. Mulligan is motionless. "Corp! Alf!" Arthur yells, his voice breaking. He crawls, adrenaline and terror making his movements frantic. He scrambles back to Mulligan's side. The corporal is lying on his back, his eyes closed, his face slack. "No, no, no," Arthur whispers, his hand hovering, afraid to touch him. He looks for the blood. His eyes scan Mulligan's chest, his neck. Nothing. Then he sees the helmet, the tin lid, the useless kitchen sink. It's still on Mulligan's head, but it's been knocked sideways, the chin strap tight against his throat, and right in the crown, perfectly centered, is a massive, spider-webbed dent. Lodged deep in the steel, so deep it has almost punched through, is a jagged, twisted piece of mortar shrapnel, the size of a man's thumb. Arthur stares at it. The impact had been square on. The shrapnel had been falling from directly above. Mulligan's eyes flutter open. He lets out a long, shuddering groan, his hand flying to his head. "Gah, bloody hell," he rasps, his voice a daze. "Corp, you're alive." Mulligan unhooks the chin strap with fumbling fingers and pulls the helmet off. He stares at the massive dent, his eyes struggling to focus. He touches the puckered steel, then slowly, tentatively, touches the top of his own head. His hair is matted with sweat and tea leaves. He's not bleeding. There's just a rapidly forming, egg-sized lump. He looks at the helmet. He looks at the piece of shrapnel that would have gone through his skull like it was paper. He looks at Arthur. A strange coughing sound comes from his chest. It's a laugh. A low, gasping, hysterical laugh. "Well, I'll be damned." Alf Mulligan wheezes, the laugh growing louder, wilder. The bloody thing worked. Another mortar, Whoomp FS, 50 yards away. Mulligan's laugh cuts off. He shoves the dented, compromised helmet back on his head. "Right," he pants, his voice shaking but alive. "Right, grab Davies. We're not dying here." Arthur doesn't wait for a second order. He scrambles to Davies, who is trying to push himself up, his face a mask of agony. "Where are you hit?" Arthur yells, his hands roving over the man's battle dress. "My leg! I can't feel my leg!" Davies gasps, his words choked with sobs. Arthur sees it. A dark, spreading stain on the man's left thigh. A bad one. "Right," Mulligan says, appearing at his side. The corporal's voice is thick, his words slightly slurred. He's clearly in agony from the impact, his brain rattling, but his adrenaline is burning hotter. On 3, we get him up, we run. "Run? Corp, he can't walk. We carry him," Mulligan growls. He's already grabbing Davies's web gear, his knuckles white. 1, 2, 3. They haul him up. Davies screams, a high, thin sound that is instantly swallowed by the snap, snap, snap of the sniper's rifle. The German is firing rapidly now, probing the gloom, trying to find them by sound. "Arm over my shoulder, lad." Mulligan grunts at Davies, slinging the man's arm around his own neck. He takes the main weight. "Arthur, you take his other side. Keep his leg clear." They half drag, half carry him, a grotesque three-legged creature staggering through the mud. It's impossible. Davies is a dead weight, his boots dragging, pulling them all down. Hump, crunch, another mortar, closer. A spray of mud and hot steel whips past them. "Leave me." Davies screams, trying to push them away. "Leave me! You can't! I'm done for! Save yourselves! Shut up!" Mulligan roars, his voice hoarse. He's stumbling, but not from a wound. He's favouring the side of his head, as if dizzy. The dented helmet is skewed, sitting comically on his skull, but he hasn't taken it off. Nobody gets left, Nobody. We don't leave anyone. The trees are 50 yards away. An eternity. Corp, the sniper. Arthur gasps, his lungs burning. He can't hit what he can't see. Mulligan pants. He's firing at the sound. Keep moving. But the sniper can see, or he can guess. A muzzle flash winks from the dark copse of trees, 400 yards away. Arthur feels a white-hot poker sear across his left arm. He cries out, stumbling, almost dropping Davies. Hit! Mulligan barks, not stopping. Grazed my arm. I'm fine. Arthur lies, his sleeve torn and already wet with blood. Good lad. They are 20 yards from the tree line. 10 yards. The sniper's bullet pings off a tree trunk just as they tumble into the relative darkness of the woods. They fall in a heap of exhausted, muddy limbs, landing in a ditch filled with rotting leaves. For a full 30 seconds, they just lie there, gasping, their breath pluming in the cold air. The only sounds are Davies's low, continuous moans, the frantic thud of Arthur's heart, and the thump-thump of the mortars, which have now shifted fire, searching for them blindly in the woods. Well, Mulligan pants, his voice shaking. He pushes himself into a sitting position, his back against a thick oak. He tenderly, gingerly, takes off his helmet. In the dim light, he runs his fingers over the massive, concave dent. Saved my life, he whispers, his voice full of a strange, shell-shocked awe. He looks over at Arthur, who is trying to rip a field dressing open with his teeth, his left arm numb. He looks at Davies, who is pale and shivering, his leg bleeding badly. That fire, Arthur says, the realization dawning on him. The smoke from the kettle. That's what they saw. That's what brought the mortars down. Mulligan is silent. He looks at the helmet in his hands, the symbol of his salvation, the cause of their damnation. Aye, he says finally, his voice heavy. It was. The best cup of tea I ever had, and the most expensive. He tosses the helmet onto the ground. It lands with a dull clank. Right, he says, the brief moment of reflection over. The veteran is back. Arthur, get that dressing on your arm, then get one on Davies. We stop the bleeding, or he's dead in an hour. We're not out of this, not by a long shot. The kettle had done its job. The Shrapnel-Stopper had done its job. Now, the real war, the long, grinding war of survival, was starting all over again. The woods are no sanctuary. They are just a different kind of trap. The mortar shells walk towards them, a series of rhythmic, ground-shaking thumps. The German crews are methodical, watering the woods, hoping to catch the men they'd flushed. Shrapnel snaps through the branches above, raining down leaves and split twigs. Dressing, Mulligan barks, his voice tight. He's blinking hard, trying to clear his vision. The blow to his head has left him disoriented, a high-pitched whine screaming in his ears. Arthur, your arm, now. Arthur fumbles with the waxy paper of his field dressing. His left arm is a heavy, useless thing, and his right hand is slick with his own blood. He can't get the packet open. Useless. He sobs, his voice thick with frustration and pain. Mulligan, with a grunt of pain, leans forward and rips the packet open with his teeth. He shoves the cotton pad at Arthur. Hold that on. Tight. Don't bleed out on me, lad. I need you. The words I need you cut through Arthur's panic. He presses the pad to his arm, the sting making him gasp, and wraps the bandage clumsily, one-handed. Now Davies, Mulligan says. He's already on his knees next to the moaning soldier. Right. Let's see the damage. It's too dark. They are in a moonless patch of woods, under a thick canopy, and the only light comes from the brief, terrifying flash of the distant mortar bursts. In that strobe of light, Arthur sees Mulligan's face. It's pale, caked in mud and tea leaves, and he's bleeding from one nostril, but his eyes are clear. Hold his leg, Mulligan orders. Arthur grabs Davies's ankle. The man is shivering violently, his teeth chattering. It's so cold, Davies whispers. I'm so cold, Corp. Shut up. You're not cold. You're in shock, Mulligan says, his voice a strange, harsh comfort. He rips Davies's woolen trousers open at the thigh. Even in the dark, they can feel the hot, sticky wetness. The wound is high up, on the inside of the thigh. Bad. Very bad. Arterial? Arthur whispers, the word tasting like bile. Don't know. Can't see. But we're not taking the chance, Mulligan grunts. He's already pulling at his own webbing, unbuckling his belt. He wraps it high and tight around Davies's leg, just below the groin. He slides his bayonet handle under the strap. Arthur, turn this. Turn it, till I say stop, and don't you dare let go. Arthur grabs the bayonet handle. Now! He turns. Davies's moan becomes a sharp, strangled scream. Tighter! Mulligan yells over him. Arthur gives it another full, agonizing twist. The buckle bites. The screaming stops, replaced by a wet, gasping sob. Stop, Mulligan orders. Hold it. Just like that. The corporal is breathing hard. Right. That's the bleeding. Now, the filth. The wound is a mess of shredded wool, mud, and leaf litter. We've got to clean it, or he'll lose the leg, Mulligan says, more to himself than to Arthur. We need water. Water, lad. Your canteen. Corp. I. Arthur's voice fails. We drank it. The tea. The terrible, crushing irony of it hits them both. The water that would have kept them hydrated, the water that could now clean a life-threatening wound, was gone. Used for a moment's comfort. Mulligan closes his eyes. For a second, Arthur thinks the corporal will finally break. But Alf Mulligan is a soldier of the old army. He adapts. His eyes snap open. He looks at his own dented, ruined helmet, lying on the forest floor like a discarded pot. He looks at Arthur's. He grabs Arthur's helmet, yanking it off his head. Hey, shut up. It's a basin, Mulligan says. Grandad was right. He places it, upside down, on the flat ground between his knees. Your canteen. What's left? Now. Arthur unscrews his cap and shakes the canteen. A few pathetic drops, maybe a tablespoon, splash into the helmet's crown. Mine, Mulligan says. He empties his own. Another few drops. It's a tiny, disgusting puddle of water, already turning to mud. Mulligan stares at it. It's not enough. He looks up, desperate. The mortars have stopped. In the sudden, profound silence, he hears a drip, drip, drip from the branches above. The rain from earlier, still clinging to the leaves. Hold it out, he hisses. What? The helmet! Hold it out! Arthur shuffles on his knees, holding the helmet up in the dark, like a beggar. Drip, drip. A few fat drops of cold, clean rainwater fall from an oak leaf and hit the steel with a tiny tink. It's a miracle. It's not enough. Sod it, Mulligan snarls. He unbuttons his own battle dress, pulls off his undershirt, a filthy, sweat-soaked piece of woolen, wrings it out over the helmet. A half cup of acrid, salty-smelling sweat and ditch water joins the puddle. It'll have to do, he breathes. He dips a corner of his own shirt into the foul concoction. He turns back to Davies. This is going to hurt, son. More than the tourniquet. And in the dark, 50 miles from the sea, a half-concussed corporal and a terrified private perform surgery in a helmet. They use the useless, shallow, tin lid, not as a kettle, not as a shield, but as a surgeon's basin, desperately cleaning a wound with sweat and rainwater, fighting off the infection that will kill them just as surely as the Germans. The cleaning is a brutal, clumsy act. Davies passes out, his head lolling back, which Mulligan declares a bloody mercy. They pack the wound with the last clean field dressing they have between them and secure it with a strap from Davies's own webbing. The woods fall into a deep, oppressive silence, broken only by the drip of water and Davies's shallow, whistling breaths. The mortar fire has moved on, searching for other, more active targets. Right, Mulligan says. He tries to stand, sways violently, and grabs an oak tree for support. He's breathing through his mouth, his face a sickly, grey-green colour in the gloom. Corp, you're not right, Arthur says, standing up, his own arm a solid, throbbing bar of pain from shoulder to wrist. Never been right, lad, Mulligan slurs, trying to grin. The effort is a grimace. Got my bell rung, that's all. It'll pass. He slides his back down the tree, sitting heavily. It'll pass. Just need a minute. Water. There is no water, Corp, Arthur says, the words flat and final. Mulligan nods, as if this is a simple administrative fact. He looks at Arthur's helmet, still on the ground, fouled with blood and their grim solution. Clean that, he orders, his voice weak but still a command. What? Clean your helmet. We're not animals. Get the muck out, put it on. We're moving. Arthur stares at him, then at the helmet. It seems a grotesque, impossible order, but he understands. It's a ritual. It's about being a soldier, not a panicked animal. He picks it up. He scrapes the worst of the filth out with a handful of leaves. He scrubs it with mud, then wipes it clean on his trouser leg. The steel is cold and damp. He lifts it, hesitates, and then places it back on his head. It feels different. It's no longer just a piece of government-issued tin. It has a history. It has weight. Good lad, Mulligan breathes. He reaches for his own helmet, the one with the great, gaping dent in the crown. He runs his thumb along the mangled steel. He looks at the shrapnel still embedded in it, a dark, twisted tooth. A tin gospeler, he whispers, his voice thick. A what, Corp? My old mum used to say a gospel was good news. This old lid, it's preachin' good news, lad. Preachin' that I'm still here. He tries to put it on, but the dent is so deep it won't sit on his head. It just wobbles and falls off. He growls in frustration. We can't stay here, Arthur says, the urgency finally breaking through his shock. The Germans, when it's light, aye, light. Mulligan nods, the simple word, a threat. He fumbles with his chin strap, trying to jury-rig it, before giving up in disgust. He's too addled. We go west, Mulligan says, his eyes closed, leaning his head back. Follow the sound, the big guns. In the far distance, so low, it's more a vibration in the bones than a sound, is a continuous, dull thunder. The Dunkirk perimeter. How do we carry him? Arthur asks, looking at Davies's inert form. We can't. Not and fight. We ain't fighting. Mulligan says, his voice a rasp. We're ghosts. We're just slipping away. He starts to unbuckle his ground sheet, his fingers clumsy and slow. No, Corp. You're done. Let me. Arthur, with his one good arm, unhooks his own ground sheet and Mulligan's. He lays them out, one on top of the other, and together they roll and heave Davies's body onto the rubberized canvas. His rifle, Arthur says, looking at the Lee-Enfield by Davies's side. Leave it, Mulligan says. And his pack, everything. We're travelling light. Just water, if we find it. And ammunition. They drag Davies's pack off, and Arthur, thinking, rifles through it. He finds a spare biscuit tin and shoves it in his own pocket. No water. Right, Arthur says. He grabs the front corner of the ground sheet. You take the other. We pull him. Mulligan gets to his feet, a long, agonizing process. He looks like a man 100 years old. He's holding his dented helmet in his hand, like a knight carrying a shield. He won't wear it, but he won't leave it. No, Mulligan says, his voice suddenly sharp. You pull, lad. You're the horse. He shoves his rifle at Arthur. You pull. I'll watch the back. It's a lie. He can't pull. He can barely stand. His job, now, is to not die. Arthur takes a loop of the ground sheet canvas and wraps it around his good wrist. He leans forward, taking the full dead weight of his comrade. The ground sheet scrapes over the leaves. West. Mulligan croaks, pointing with his bayonet into the absolute dark. And so they begin. A broken, two-man, one-armed team, dragging a dying man on a ground sheet, led by a concussed corporal who is carrying a ruined helmet that saved his life, and a private who is wearing a kettle that almost got them all killed. They melt into the blackness, one agonizing, mud-sucking footstep at a time, the distant thunder of the guns their only guide. The night has no end. It is just a succession of miseries. The world shrinks to the 3 feet in front of Arthur's face, illuminated by nothing. His work is the canvas strap in his good hand. He pulls. He plants a foot in the unseen mud. He pulls again. Behind him, he hears the awful, constant sound of their escape. The slur-scrape of the ground sheet dragging Davies's 150-pound body over the forest floor. With every yard, the canvas cuts deeper into his wrist. His wounded arm is a throbbing, useless weight, hot with infection and agony. He's pretty sure the sniper's bullet had chipped the bone. He doesn't care. He just pulls. Behind him stumbles Mulligan. The corporal is the real problem now. Keep left, Mulligan mutters, his voice a thick rasp. Left of the big tree. Corp, it's pitch black, Arthur gasps, not stopping. There are only trees. The big one. By the water, there's no water. Shh. They'll hear, Mulligan hisses, grabbing Arthur's shoulder. Arthur stumbles, almost falling. Corp, you have to be quiet, Arthur snarls, fear and exhaustion making his voice sharp. Mulligan is a ghost, haunting their retreat. He's not a soldier anymore. He's a walking concussion. He trips over roots. He walks into low-hanging branches. He stops for minutes at a time, staring at nothing, until Arthur has to go back and get him. And through it all, he has not let go of his helmet. He carries the dented, tin gospeler in his left hand, his rifle in his right, a bizarre parody of a knight on a quest. They are moving through a landscape of pure sound, the rustle of their own desperate, clumsy movement, the drip of the rain, which has started again, a cold, persistent misery, and the distant, rolling thunder of the guns to the west, the sound of the perimeter, the sound of the Royal Navy, the sound of a world that still, impossibly, existed. Sometime after midnight, they stumble out of the woods and into a field of thick, wet clover. The change in sound is terrifying. The slur-scrape of the ground sheet is now a loud, wet sh, hh, hh on the open ground. Stop, Arthur gasps, dropping the canvas. He falls to his knees, his lungs burning. We're too loud, too open. Mulligan wanders up, his head tilted, as if listening to a faraway radio. Tea, he says, his voice conversational. That's the ticket. A good brew. Mum had a kettle. Corp, shut up, Arthur begs, his voice breaking. He crawls to Mulligan and puts a hand on his arm. Corp, Alf, it's Arthur. We have to hide. The name seems to penetrate the fog. Mulligan blinks, his eyes finding Arthur in the dark. Arthur, right. Lad, good lad. He seems to come back to himself for a moment. He sniffs the air. Smoke. Arthur's blood freezes. He sniffs. The corporal is right. Faint, on the wet wind, is the smell of wood smoke and cooking meat. Mulligan's hand clamps down on Arthur's. Ditch. Now. They grab the ground sheet and half roll, half tumble into a shallow drainage ditch at the edge of the field. They land in a foot of icy, stagnant water. Arthur stifles a yell as the filthy water soaks his wounded arm. Don't move, Mulligan whispers, his voice suddenly, terrifyingly clear. Don't breathe. They lie there, Arthur's head pillowed on the muddy bank, Mulligan coiled next to him, his dented helmet held to his chest. Davies is a submerged lump at their feet. Then they hear it, voices, guttural, spoken in a language of harsh consonants, a German patrol, moving along the road 50 yards away. They are casual, laughing about something. A match flares, illuminating a face under a helmet, the shape so different from their own, and the end of a cigarette glows. Arthur feels his heart trying to hammer its way out of his chest. He's holding his breath, his diaphragm screaming. Mulligan, right next to him, is perfectly, deathly still. He is no longer a concussed old man. He is a hunter. He has his rifle forward, the safety off. The patrol lingers, the soldiers sharing the cigarette. They are talking about the cold, about the miserable, English weather. Then, with a clatter of gear and a final, harsh laugh, they move on. Their footsteps fade. Arthur and Mulligan lie in the ditch for 10 full minutes, not moving a muscle. The adrenaline has cleared Mulligan's head, but it's wearing off. He lets out a long, shuddering sigh, and the veteran is gone again. Cold, he whispers, his teeth chattering. So cold. We have to go, Corp, before they come back. Can't, lad. Done, just done. Arthur looks at the man who saved him. The man who had been a rock. He's slumped against the ditch wall, his eyes closed. He has, finally, given up. No, Arthur says. He's not a private anymore. No, you're not. He grabs Mulligan by his webgear and hauls him up. Get up. Can't, head. I don't care about your head. Get up. Arthur is screaming in a whisper. We walk, or we die here. I am not dying here. Not after all this. He shoves Mulligan's dented helmet into his hands. You wanted a gospel. Preach this. We're walking. Now. He turns, grabs the canvas strap, and starts to pull Davies's body out of the ditch. He doesn't look back. For a moment, he's alone. Then, he hears the suck-clomp of a boot behind him, and Mulligan's voice, a ghostly, cracked whisper. Aye, west, to the water. A good brew. The first, sickening, grey light of dawn is beginning to stain the eastern sky. The night is over. Their cover is gone.